Hi, and welcome to the second podcast of And1 Analytics. I'm your host, Alex West. I'm bringing in a guest today. Got a guest in studio. Well, not in studio, I suppose. He's coming to us via Skype. But we have a guest, and we're going to do a little Raptors postmortem. After the sweep, it was pretty awful. So we're going to talk about what the future holds for the Toronto Raptors and what they have going forward in terms of assets and in terms of competitive nature. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, and we'll get started. Levi, you want to come on in?
Hey there, Alex. How you doing?
Hey, man, what's up? So, so it is not.
I'm bummed.
Oh yeah, I imagine you are. It's not been a terribly entertaining playoff in any stretch of the imagination, I don't think. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we had a few pretty good games through the San Antonio series, both of them at this point, and some of the Washington and Boston series. But yeah, overall, mostly just a lot of sweeps and a lot of higher seeds winning.
I heard somebody say this today, and I thought it was so just perfectly said, that you could have not watched any of the Cavaliers or any of the Warriors series even as a hardcore fan, and you would just be totally fine with what you haven't seen.
Yeah. And you would just be like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Like that was
none of the games, honestly.
Yeah, if you watched them, you could just be like, okay, I'll catch the box score on LeBron.
Yeah.
I'll catch the box score on Steph Curry. Fine, that's it.
Oh, LeBron's averaging 31 points. Yeah, okay.
Okay, that seems normal.
Yeah.
So
it's every playoffs.
Yeah. So that's been the playoffs up to now, but let's talk about something near and dear to your heart. Let's talk about the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, well, the Toronto Raptors capped off another in a long line of 50-plus win seasons that abruptly ended in the playoffs because LeBron James is one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And while we had a pretty solid addition of Tucker and Ibaka in the mid-season, I kind of felt like the entire season we just weren't ever going to beat LeBron, and that was pretty evident as we couldn't even get a game out of him.
Yeah, that was I think we all sort of talked ourselves into the idea, like the farcical idea that we talk ourselves into every year of like, oh yeah, Toronto's tough. They got PJ Tucker. He's a LeBron stopper.
Yeah, we kind of felt like, oh yeah, we have these new additions. We have Tucker, who is a fantastic defender and really did add a lot to the team. But at the end of the day, LeBron James is LeBron James, and it's just going to be hard to stop him unless you are the Golden State Warriors, at this point, just because of how incredible he is, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, this has just been an unreasonably spectacular season.
Sure.
Postseason for him. Just the numbers, the sheer numbers that he's putting up, has just been ridiculous.
But even the regular season, he was doing one of his most efficient seasons of his life, at least.
Oh yeah. Well, and I heard
of his career.
I heard Brian Windhorst was talking about this, and Windhorst, like, he's the in-camp LeBron, has been for 25 years, and like covering LeBron since he was in high school. But he said that he felt like LeBron was at like 75% during the Raptors series.
Yeah. I heard that. Just he was doing exactly what he needed to, but he wasn't trying.
Not even a little bit more.
Yeah, it was just like, oh hey, yeah, I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm scoring, and I'm averaging 31 points and 8 assists or whatever this series, and I'm just like kind of in it,
And that's crazy. I mean, that's just to think about a guy who can coast through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, not drop a game, average 35 points. I mean,
and average 46% from 3, which he just doesn't do. That's insane.
In the first podcast, I talked about numbers that matter. Like, that was my number. Just his ridiculous shooting percentage, how he's creating shots for other people. It's unbelievable. And frankly, like, this is one of those times where, as a Celtics fan, you hate it, or as a Raptors fan, you hate it. But as an NBA fan, you're like, boy, I'm really glad.
Well, that's the thing is, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about how it's really unfortunate to be anything but a Cavaliers or a Golden State fan right now, just because every time you watch them, you feel like they're the only people that are ever going to win for the next 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
But then when you think about it, you're like, okay, it sucks to be anybody but those fans, but it's awesome to be an NBA fan because you're watching not only, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, one of the best teams we've ever seen in the NBA, but you're also watching LeBron James, who is possibly the greatest, by the end of his career, could easily be considered for the best player ever. And you're just...
Yeah, it's just that the product of the league is at such a high level right now. And even teams that aren't competitive are interesting. You got Memphis waiting in the wings. You've got, obviously, Milwaukee, a team that just scared the hell out of Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
You've got all these young players. You got Giannis. You got Karl Anthony Towns. You got Anthony Davis. Just the league is in such a great place right now.
It's in such a great place right now in the sense that you're seeing fantastic teams at the top of the standings winning and feeling unbeatable. But you're also seeing the groundwork for what the NBA is going to be in 5 years when LeBron finally short circuits and can't play anymore. And then, Stephen Curry gets 33, 34, and suddenly he's on the downswing. You get to see kind of the groundwork for teams like Milwaukee, New Orleans, Minnesota, teams with incredible young talent that just need a few years to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great points of the collective bargaining agreement and the TV deal, and like the future of the NBA is so incredibly bright.
Oh yeah,
just because you have so much talent. I can't remember a time where there was so much young talent in the league, and so it's just fantastic. Anyway, let's get into what we brought you in for. Let's do the autopsy. Let's do the postmortem. Let's talk about your Toronto Raptors. And let's go back a little ways. Let's go back to February, and let's talk about right after the deals, when you get Ibaka, you get Tucker, and you feel like all of a sudden, okay, we've got a squad that can compete with LeBron, that can compete with a struggling Cavaliers squad. Let's start there, and then we'll sort of work our way forward.
Okay, well, first off, the deals made in February, the trade deadline deals, I think it's a pretty unanimous thing at this point that the Raptors easily had the best success out of that trade deadline this year.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's close. That's.
Oh yeah, it's just, Tucker and Ibaka had something we needed so badly, which were just tighter defense and third option scoring. Like, Carroll, Valanciunas, and Powell are going to be great role players that have a few big nights every year. Valanciunas is a great rebounder. He's going to get 10 or 11 boards every night. But then nobody really had the consistency of being like, oh, hey, this guy's going to add 15, 20 points every game, and he's just going to be the third person to go to, because our first person to go to is DeMar, second person's Lowry, and then now we have Ibaka. Because Ibaka... Sorry, go ahead.
No. Yeah. That's well, I just wanted to cut in, and there's something I've been thinking about, and sort of been listening to other people and thinking about in general. But how do you feel about Valanciunas? Like, with the way the league's going in such a small way, for a guy who doesn't have range, who sort of creates these spacing problems, how do you feel about Valanciunas in the league right now? Like, do you think he's a five that you want to build around going forward?
Well, first off, of course he has range. Did you see the 1 3-pointer he hit in that Milwaukee series?
Good point.
That was incredible. That was truly one of the highlights of his career.
Okay.
But in all seriousness, yeah, he is a center that he is a traditional center in the sense that he's gonna spend the entire 48 minutes or however long he plays. He's gonna spend that entire game deep in the post, waiting for either somebody to pass him the ball, he can shoot a short mid-range shot or go in for a dunk or layup, or he's just going to sit there and get every board he possibly can for the entire game. And, he's in a weird spot where you not only do you have a lot of other scoring options like Ibaka and DeMar Carroll and, obviously our main guys, DeMar and Lowry, but you also just have a lot of people that are still getting those rebounds and still getting those boards when they need to. And Valanciunas is not an incredible defender. He's big, so he has some upside. He's going to get, he's able to get blocks with people running down the lane and such. But to truly answer your question, I don't know how much Valanciunas has a future on the Raptors for the sole reason that I think Ibaka at the 5 has been much better than Valanciunas at the 5. If anything, Valanciunas is going to be a decent backup option for Ibaka, considering how much better Ibaka seems to be in that position. He can still get the rebounds, he can still get his blocks and such, but he also has the range and the efficiency to score. He's averaging 14 points a game this season. He's more efficient on the scoring end, and that's something I think that is much more valuable for this team specifically.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, my only thing is there's that adage that sort of crept its way into NBA thinking circles of, like, you can play one guy that can't shoot, but you can't play two guys that can't shoot. And when I say shoot, I mean particularly shooting three-pointers. It's like you can play one guy who can't shoot three-pointers, but then when you start to branch into that second guy who can't shoot three-pointers, like, there's a lot of issue with that. And that's sort of my problem is, like, you got Ibaka. Like, Ibaka's shot 39% or something. He shot 39% from three during the regular season in his 23 games with Toronto. So he's a spacing guy. But then you've got DeRozan. And so when you play these lineups that have DeRozan, that have Valanciunas, you have two guys in the lineup that can't shoot, and it just becomes this spacing nightmare for Kyle Lowry. Like, the lane all of a sudden is closed off. And so that's sort of my thought on Valanciunas is, like, he seems to be an either or with DeMar DeRozan.
DeMar's 3-point percentage has been a really tough time for the Raptors in general. Just considering, like, a shooting guard that can't shoot the 3 nowadays, or can't shoot a 3 nowadays, is just not nearly as valuable as one that can. And like you said, having two guys on the team that can't shoot threes is just going to really limit the amount of spacing you get, especially with Lowry, who's gonna be dishing, he's gonna be running into the lane and dishing the ball out to the open man.
That he gets a lot of success in penetration, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Lowry's fantastic at penetration, but he's very good at getting into the lane, getting the two guys on him, or even three guys, and then dishing it out to DeMar Carroll or Ibaka, who's wide open on the wing. So, like, having DeRozan and Valanciunas, two guys that just are not gonna get the ball into the hoop from 3-point range, like, anytime soon, when Lowry's running into the lane and getting in the penetration, you do end up realizing, like, one or two guys are just gonna have to be, like Ibaka, somebody that thrives as a post player and a post defender especially, is gonna have to wait on the wings because there's no one else. Like, he's the only person that can get wide open and knock down a 3-pointer that isn't Lowry. That's
that's right. But, like, another thing that I noticed with Valanciunas, and apparently this is just the podcast that we're doing. We're just talking about the Giannis Valanciunas podcast.
Oh yeah, this is the Giannis Valanciunas podcast.
This is the podcast. But
for sure.
But the other thing that I noticed in that Cleveland series is, like, Valanciunas would get caught in no man's land, particularly when he was defending pick and rolls. And that defenses, LeBron or Kyrie, either one, when they had the ball, would find his man and sort of get him in these pick and rolls where they could shoot mid-range jumpers, or they could shoot pick and pops, or they could, like, feed it through to Tristan Thompson. And like, that's what sort of concerns me about Valanciunas as a player is like he is a good rebounder. He's a great rebounder. He's a guy that absolutely annihilates the Celtics every time we play because he's big,
Oh
he's
yeah.
brutal, he's physical. But when it comes to playing against these smaller teams, Golden State or Cleveland or Houston, that he doesn't have a ton of value, and that's sort of like my issue with Valanciunas.
Yeah, and specifically teams like Cleveland, Houston, Warriors, they're going to be the exact teams that are going to kick every ball out to the open three-point guy. And if you're Toronto and you can't do the same thing when they're doing it every second or third possession, if you can't do that, if you just don't have enough shooting around you to do that as consistently and as often as Cleveland or Houston's going to do, you're just not going to get anywhere. And that's a problem I've had with Valanciunas for a while now. Is as good of a rebounder as he is, he's just not going to have value because DeRozan has such a problem shooting three-pointers. And maybe that's a DeRozan problem, less of a Valanciunas problem. But if you're trying to build around DeRozan because DeRozan is so good and efficient in so many other aspects.
And a 26 point a game scorer and a guy who
Exactly,
started the All-Star game. Like he's an All-Star. Like shortcomings notwithstanding. He's a great player.
But that's the thing is you kind of have to decide do you want to have a good rebounder and Valanciunas on your team and have him starting without DeRozan, or do you want to have DeRozan who consistently puts the ball in the hole and gets 27 points a game or whatever he's averaging, right? 27?
I think it's 26. But, 26, 27 is like something right around there. Whatever.
Yeah, 27.3.
There you go.
Yeah, 27.3 points per game. He's an incredible scorer.
Yeah, exactly.
He gets it. He gets the ball in the hole. He gets points. He gets he's able to get points every single game. Valanciunas is averaging 12 points per game, and those 9.5 rebounds are important, but you have other rebounders on your team. Even Ibaka, who's averaging 6.7 rebounds a game, that's still a significant amount. He's still doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's just.
And there's the rebound by committee. We've gone away in the league from having a rebounder, having a Shaquille O'Neal. And you see guys like Andre Drummond who are kind of getting pushed sort of the wayside because we don't have a guy who grabs 40% of the boards for a team anymore. It's sort of just rebounded by committee. Here's 6, here's 4, here's 3.
Yeah. Hell, Russell Westbrook is a point guard averaging 10 rebounds a game. It's not about being amazing at rebounding anymore. It's kind of about dishing it out to each player on the team. Yeah. So a person like Russell Westbrook is going to get 10 rebounds a game, even if obviously because his teammates want him to.
Yeah.
They just are we want you to have 10 rebounds a game so you can get that. And that's not something that typically happened in Shaq's days because Shaq was insanely dominant and would just grab every rebound. So
yeah, and
that's a little different.
You had a guy who could grab 40% of
exactly.
This leads me perfectly into my next question. Let's talk about what happens going forward from here. So the Cleveland series obviously not successful. You don't feel like you have a formula going forward that's going to be competitive against the Cavaliers and the Warriors. Let's talk about what happens going forward. Let's talk about do you build around DeMar? Do you let Kyle walk? What's your ideal scenario for Toronto from this point forward?
Okay, so I thought about this a lot the past couple of days, trying to think of the best possible options we have, and I'm pretty much always thinking about this because I love the Raptors and they're great and they deserve the best future. But essentially, Kyle is opting out of his next year deal, which makes sense.
Which we knew.
Yeah, that's obvious. His contract is awful. He's $12 million a year for a starting point guard of his level is just not enough. So the thing that I think concerns me a little bit is the fact that Kyle definitely has a lot of places to go and a lot of places that would want him, but they can't pay him as much money. We have his bird rights. We can give him. I think we can give him $210 for 5, which is
that extra year, that extra $40 million. That all of a sudden, like
exactly.
the Chris Paul caveat.
Yeah, the Chris Paul. Yeah, it's the Chris Paul extension, as people call it.
Yeah,
because he like put that in there because he was like, I want more money.
Which is sort of as a sidebar, which is crazy that people think like, oh, Chris Paul's not going to sign with the Clippers. Like, he wrote that into the CBA to sign with the Clippers.
He did that because he wanted to sign with the Clippers.
He wanted to make $200 million and sign with the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's an insane amount of money. So
but
no one blames him for that.
Exactly, but that's the one thing that they have with Lowry is like, so do you pay the guy? Do you shell out $200 million for a guy who turned 31 in March, who at the end of this deal is going to be 36 years old, who's probably 6 feet not a lot more than that?
He's probably 6 feet tall. We're not 100% sure.
He's probably.
So here's what I'm thinking. If we look at our team right now, we have a very solid core. We have a good point guard who's a little older than we want, but is still a good point guard. He has his flaws of being a little bit shorter than most point guards and kind of being a small point guard, and especially a small older point guard has diminishing returns.
Sure.
However, we have DeMar DeRozan, who is an elite scorer and who is, like I said, he's gonna get buckets every game. He just is. That's his plan. He can do so much on the floor. He's not the greatest, assist. He's not the greatest assister of all time, but he's also an incredible scorer that is just going to give you so much on the scoring end that stuff like assists and rebounds and spacing is something we can at least slightly overlook and try to build around. I think the key is to try to build around DeMar at this point and not worry so much about Lowry.
Okay.
Because Lowry's going to get older. He's going to get worse. He's very injury prone, which is one of the toughest things is just how the past 2 playoffs he's had to miss multiple games due to injuries. I mean, he missed he missed 20 games in the season due to a wrist injury. He missed the last game against Cleveland because of his knee injury. He's very injury prone, and he's getting older. And an injury prone player that's getting older, he's early 30s right now. By the end of that deal, he'll be 36. It feels really strange to try to commit to making him your star point guard. So while I don't think we should skip out on re-signing him, I think that re-signing him is a great plan. I just don't think he's going to be the person we're gunning for, where he's not our star on the team anymore. We've kind of given that role to DeMar, and now we try to build the rest of the team around DeMar because Lowry and DeMar have at least some sort of proven success rate. I mean, they've at least, even if their postseason success is slightly less than their regular season success, they have some amount of success rate. So they work well together. So I would say keep Lowry. Do what we can to keep him. Hopefully he'll commit to us. I'm sure. I mean, he seems to enjoy Toronto, and he seems to enjoy our team. So
and he enjoys playing with DeRozan. I mean, they're buddies, all that kind of thing.
So I think we re-signed Lowry. We re-signed Ibaka.
Which puts you over the cap, so you're going to be sort of pushing that luxury tax area.
Yeah, I mean, I think that putting us over the cap is not a major concern right now. I mean, as long as I can't even remotely pronounce his name, but the owner of the Raptors, as long as he's willing to pay that tax, I think it's important to at least give us this next year to try to work out the problems that we have. Because if we re-sign Ibaka, we re-sign Tucker, we re-sign Lowry, we get all of our same people back in, and we just essentially try to make it work and here's sort of a long shot because I don't think this is going to happen, but with a new coach, because
Oh, okay.
I think Dwayne Casey has just fucked everything up. Like
Okay.
I cannot get behind Dwayne Casey. I think that every time I see him try to commit to or try to do certain lineups, he doesn't really know how to work with this team specifically, and he just kind of lacks a lot of basic coaching skills that are like, he's thrown away a lot of games or a lot of like at least chances for games
Yeah.
specifically due to his bad lineup choices.
And I'm
Especially,
I,
go
and
ahead.
and I think Masai Ujiri sort of said that thing this morning. Like, if you saw any of the that came out of the press conference that they held, sort of
Uh huh.
the postseason press conference, where he said like we're gonna have culture change, and Dwayne knows that this style of play is something we need to change, and there's all these things that sort of indicate that maybe it's not the lineups that are the problem. It's Masai. I mean, it's Dwayne Casey that maybe that they believe sort of is the
It
guy who's gonna eat the blame on this.
Yeah, and there's a lot to say about DeRozan's inability to perform in the playoffs. He kind
Shot
of get
6% from three.
Yeah, I mean he gets something about the playoffs. He has a lot of problems with that. But that's another thing you can kind of change with coaching, He probably just needs a new environment. He obviously is able to perform. It's just in the playoffs he starts just cracking under pressure, and maybe that's something wrong with him, and maybe that's just something we're not going to be able to fix. Or maybe that's a problem with the way Casey decides to coach him and the way Casey decides to set up these lineups. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are missing is they look at the problems that they've had in the past and just said like, okay, we've tried this lineup over and over and over again. Why is it not working? We should get rid of everything, start a new tank, go 0-82 and just get the best draft picks for the next 4 years, and then we'll be fine. When in reality, that should be everyone's last ditch effort. Is like, oh hey, we have been unable to perform for 5+ years, and now we're maybe even more than 5 years, because I know the Clippers have been unable to perform for 6 or 7 years at this point.
Well, for all of their existence, but yeah,
Yeah, well, for all of their existence, but with this like specifically, obviously great lineup, they still haven't been able to get anywhere
yeah.
with, which is insane. But
So here's my thing. I think you are at a crossroads, and I think that's like very evident with the sweep. The sweep was probably the best thing that could happen to you, because if you go 4-2 in this, like you win 2 games, you win your home games, and then you get beaten game 6, like on your home floor, and they took 1. I think you get put in this position. There's something that I always talk about is you're sort of in that NBA middle of the pack, and that's the place that you never want to be. And I think that that's what Toronto sort of is right now. Is they're in that NBA middle of the pack, and so you either go up, which is very hard, or you go down, which is a little bit easier. And I think that's sort of what, like, I'll say it. I'll come out. I'll say that I think Toronto probably is a blow-it-up candidate. I think that you can trade Lowry in December, or you can shop him, or you can maybe let him walk. You can win 28 games with DeMar DeRozan and hope you hit the jackpot, and and all of a sudden maybe be back in contention. But the problem is you just keep kicking the can down the road. It's like right now, is any team going to win the East in the next 2 to 3 seasons? Probably not. And I think you say like, okay, we'll run it back. We'll pay Lowry $40 million a year, and then all of a sudden he's 36 years old, and we're no better off. Or we can start to rebuild around DeMar in his prime, which is unfortunate, but you can rebuild and maybe be competitive sort of at the close of LeBron's career. And that's where I am now, is saying maybe that waiting out LeBron is starting to be the best option across the board. What do you think about that?
now I have a few thoughts on that, and the first one is I am pretty adamantly against blowing it up now for the sole reason that we still have a lot of talent on our roster. We have an extremely prevalent amount of talent, and talent is important. It's the key. It's what you need. And we have plenty of talent to at least be Eastern Conference Finals contenders for a few more years. Even though we had to hit LeBron pretty early this year, we can pretty easily either dodge him or possibly even beat him if we figure out a way to fix our problems. I think the biggest problem right now is coaching. I think that Dwayne Casey is just doing an awful job, and I think I would rather have almost anyone than him right now, mostly because I just don't think he knows how to coach these specific talents. I just don't think he's really aware of how to utilize the talents of DeMar and Lowry, just because he tends to throw really weird lineups out there, and he loves to do this thing where he either just experiments in the playoffs, which is just the dumbest idea, and then when we're down 3 with 20 seconds to go, he says, okay, here's what we're going to do. Norman Powell, we're gonna clear up the lane for you, and you're gonna dunk it with 15 seconds left.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, but why would we do that? We're down 3. And he's like, just do it. It's good. And then we'll foul the other team, and then we'll be down 3 again. And that seems to be what he does in a lot of really weird clutch situations. He just kind of lacks a lot of basic skills to coach, NBA teams in general, but also just this team. He doesn't really understand a lot of the mechanics in it, and we just need a better coach. And that's my main problem at this point, is we need a better coach. And if we get a better coach and it still doesn't work, it is perfectly fine to assume we should just blow it up.
So,
because essentially, I think that if we give it one more year, maybe 2 more years, probably just 1. If we give it 1 more year, we bring in a new coach, and then we still miss the East Finals, or even worse, we don't even win our division again. If we go 2 years in a row not winning our division, we're not getting anywhere, and we can think about changing it, or we can just honestly at that point change it, because at this point we're thinking about it, but I don't think it's the right move at this point.
Well, I think there's sort of an economic issue that sort of factors into it, or at least in my impression of it, is that you have to maximize the value for the players that you have. And I don't know that I said kicking the can down the road. I think that's maybe what running it back is kicking the can down the road. It's like, well, we'll decide in 2 years, or we'll decide next year. And then what you get is a diminished value out of a guy like Lowry. So Lowry's 31 right now, and 2 years from now he'll be 33. So you start to get this impression of like, well, maybe you can trade him now. There's a lot of good point guards in the league. A lot of teams that are competitive have a good point guard. There are very few places where Lowry sort of fits. Not to take away from his skill set, but just in terms of like, a lot of teams have their guy. Point guard is a position that has grown in the past 5 years to where everybody has the guard they want. And Lowry's 31 right now. If you trade him now, you maximize the value that you get out of him. But you wait 2 years, now he's 33, and he's got two or three seasons left on his $40 million contract. I think it's harder to rationalize taking him on at that point. And that's sort of my issue, or that's sort of my impression of why you would want to go ahead and start that rebuilding process, is that you're maximizing the value of the assets that you have now, as opposed to waiting a couple of years, probably not getting past LeBron, just because we don't get past LeBron in the East. LeBron is the gatekeeper of the NBA Finals. But, that if you wait 2 or 3 seasons, then all of a sudden you've got a early 30s DeMar DeRozan, you've got a middle 30s Kyle Lowry, you've got a middle 30s Serge Ibaka, and you still didn't do anything. And now nobody wants these guys because they're playing on these massive contracts.
Okay, yeah. And, man, it's tough because I know you're right here. I get everything you're saying. I understand. Like, it's hard to wait a year or 2 years on Lowry, especially on Lowry, and then even on Ibaka and DeRozan. It's hard to take that and try to maximize the value out of it in a year or two is going to be pretty tough. I have a big problem not at least trying to change the culture and trying to change it with something like a new coach or even just a few like new role players out of the free agent, So like it's tough. It's a tough call because I think that maximizing the value out of someone like Lowry, who is kind of a tier 2 point guard at this point. I mean, like, he's easily in the top 6 or 7 point guards in the league, but he's kind of on a slightly lower level than those top 5 guys. So it's gonna be hard to maximize value out of him on a massive contract 2 years from now. So I think that the best option for the future would be to just try and get rid of everything and rebuild and do all that kind of stuff. But I would hate to get rid of Lowry and get rid of Ibaka and DeRozan and all them and try to rebuild without at least trying to maximize their potential with a new sort of style of play. And I just think that the biggest problem these past few years has been Casey just being just a terrible coach and just not being able to maximize what we have. And that's the worst thing, to have so much talent and just not be able to get anywhere,
All right, so we got time for about one more question. And here's my one question. And really talk about this honestly. I mean, if you think it's true, I don't think it's true, but I feel like DeMar DeRozan falls into that second tier of star players. If you go around and sort of take the pulse of the league and you say who is each team's best player, I feel like you get DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan's not on the LeBron level. He's not on the Durant level. He's not on the Kawhi, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. Like that upper tier, that upper echelon. I feel like when you talk about DeMar DeRozan, you get more into the Paul Millsap, young Karl Anthony Towns, like that very defined second tier of stars. And so my question is this: do you ever see a scenario where you are competitive for a championship with DeMar DeRozan as your best player?
Well, the first thing I would dive into is I think DeMar DeRozan is easily above the players like Paul Millsap and those second-tier players. I would 100% say that DeMar DeRozan is in the top tier of, best players on the best teams right now. He's overshadowed by the fact that the best players on the best teams right now are some of the best talent we've seen this decade or this millennial even. So it's hard to look at DeMar right now and say, oh yeah, he's a top 10, top 15 player in the league right now. But I mean, if you look at things like the All NBA teams, you're gonna see DeMar on second or third team All NBA teams because he really is that type of player. He is an elite scorer. He's a star. He's an all-star. He's a star player. He's the best player on the Raptors right now, and I think he really is in that kind of top tier of players. He may not be as good as most of those top tier players. I think he has some weaknesses specifically in the playoffs that need to be addressed and need to be changed.
Well, and he's a two guard that can't shoot 3-pointers. I mean, not to take away,
big.
but like it's the development of the league that all of a sudden, like, you have a two guard that can't shoot 3-pointers, that can't space the floor, and it's like, well, he's got a lot of other marketable assets, or he's got a lot of other really high level skills, but that's a skill that matters right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same kind of argument that a lot of people we're talking about with the MVP stuff, where they say, like, okay, let's look at the MVP candidates. So first off, LeBron is the best player in the league. There's no doubt. He's the best player in the league right now. But he's not the MVP this season. You know?
Yeah.
So, like, with DeMar DeRozan, yeah, he's one of the best players in the league right now. But he doesn't have the same type of skills that a lot of other best players in the league have right now. So he's not considered to be on that elite upper echelon level of players because of that. Even though I would still put him as one of the top 15, top 10 players in the league right now, he is You're saying
that he's the lower end of tier 1.
Yeah, exactly. He's an amazing player.
Which I don't think is so different. I think it's a very semantical difference from what I'm saying. I think he's the top end of tier 2. I think he's probably one of the best guys in that second group, because I don't put him. Mm-hmm. I'm not like in an ideal world where salaries don't matter. Like, I'm not trading James Harden for him. I'm not trading Kawhi Leonard for him. I'm not trading Russell Westbrook for him. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and maybe there's not too many more on that list, but I think that I can probably name 12 or 15 players that, if salary didn't matter, I wouldn't trade for DeMar DeRozan. So maybe you're right. Maybe he is sort of on that back end of the top tier or the high end of the second tier. But my question, and I want an answer out of you. I want you to give me this.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Okay, give it to me. Is having DeMar DeRozan as your best player, can you win a championship with DeMar DeRozan as your best player?
So, in the end, no. You're just, with DeMar DeRozan as the player he is right now, he's just, I don't think there's really a scenario where a two guard that can't shoot the three is going to be your best player on a championship contender, you know?
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that he's still got a lot of value to championship contenders that have a better player. So if we do decide to part from DeMar DeRozan to try and rebuild ourselves and kind of get to a point where we can be a championship contender, he could easily go to a ton of other teams that have a lot of talent that he could be that same kind of guy. You know, he could be the second, third best player on a team because he is an incredible scorer. He's very similar to Isaiah Thomas in the sense that, like, I don't think that Isaiah Thomas is going to be the best player on a championship contending team,
right?
But he is going to be an elite scorer, and he's going to be somebody that's going to give you a ton of just value every single game.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually a lot to the comparison of DeMar and Thomas, because Thomas has a lot of
deficiencies. There's a ton of deficiencies.
He's got some deficiencies, especially in the defensive area, which is another thing DeMar struggles with. He has some shaky defense at times. He's better than Isaiah Thomas, but not being able to shoot the three is a big deal, and maybe he just needs to work on that. Maybe that's his one thing keeping him from really getting to that next level.
It's just summer locked in the gym, jacking up 1,000 3-pointers a day.
Just every single day, just 1,000 3-pointers. And eventually he'll hit 400 of those 1,000, and then he'll be like, I'm good. And
that's the top level.
That's the thing, man. That's what he's doing.
I want to shoot 40% unguarded in the gym. That's the number I want to hit.
Yeah, and that's what he's got to do. And then at the end of that, he'll just come back to the season and he'll shoot 26% again, and it'll be all good, and it'll be back to normal, and then all that work will be nothing.
For nothing. Well, that's I think what we just got there at the end of that question was the real Raptors fan showing through. Because negativity.
Oh yeah, no, he's great, but like, as soon as he gets to the playoffs, he's gonna shoot like 4% from three, and then we're gonna be like, I don't know how he shot less than 6%, but he did somehow.
All right. Well, Levi, we always appreciate you having on the show. Imagine that as we go forward, it's going to be a lot. We're going to have you on a lot just to get your kind of analysis, not just about the Raptors, but about the league. I mean, because there's so much more that we didn't even get a chance to get into, and that's the problem. Is like, well, you got 45 minutes. Like, we didn't even get into half the things we wanted to get into.
Oh, yeah. Not even close.
Yeah, so...
But that's the nature of podcasting.
That's it. That it is. So, but thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a part of all this.
And I will make sure to be on here the moment Dwayne Casey gets fired.
That's what we're gonna have an emergency podcast.
Emergency podcast. I'm gonna call you and be like, Alex, we have to talk about this. Dwayne Casey's gone. They're bringing in Luke Walton. I don't know why.
But they just brought him in. They just got him.
They brought him in. They didn't hire him. They just brought him in.
Why they just bring in Jerry Stackhouse from the 905 Raptors? Like Stackhouse.
They brought in Greg Popovich, but like he's not. They're not hiring him. He's just there.
He's just. They're doing a Philly situation where they just bring in Brian Colangelo.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anyway, well, appreciate you coming on. Always appreciate your analysis and your insight, and thanks for being a part of.
It was my pleasure.
Podcast number 2. A very special thank you to Levi Pitts for coming on, being our first guest here on the N1 Analytics podcast. It's not easy going for 30 minutes by yourself. It is much easier doing 45 with a friend. So thanks, Levi. And make sure you're following us on Twitter and at N1 Analytics. Make sure you're following the blog, n1analytics.blogspot.com. You can get our podcasts on Soundcloud. You can get our podcasts on YouTube. And just try and interact with us whatever way you can. We always appreciate it. I'm your host for N1 Analytics. I'm Alex West. Good night.